Thank you so much for coming, and a special thanks to Bob Harrington, who will be our speaker and presenter this evening. Just a word or two about Barbara. Barbara is a Dominican Sister of Peace who has spent 10 years in Mexico and Guatemala working with women refugees, teaching women to be health promoters. She also lived and worked at Crystal Spring in Massachusetts, where she was in charge of the children's programs. And while she was doing that, she was a hospital chaplain at a nearby hospital. Barbara has been a student of Thomas Berry for many, many years. And when we received word from all of you that you wanted more in about cosmology, we've read the Noosphere together. We've done a number of different programs together. So I thought of Barbara, and she very creatively came up with the title, The Cosmology of Peace, from Thomas Berry's book, The Dream of the Earth. So Barbara, again, thank you so much for being with us, and it's all yours now. Barbara, we can't hear you. You're muted. There you go.
Thanks,
All right.
Margaret. Thanks,
Okay.
and really good evening to everyone. And thank you, Margaret, for such a sisterly introduction. That's how it happens, kind of
Yeah.
serendipitously,
Yes.
doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it does really always send a tingle down my spine to be found again and again within the miracle, the habit, the power of allurement. It really does. And it's that which pulls us together and gives us a deep sense of unity, no matter how different we are from one another. And I think that I'm thrilled to be tonight with people who are participating in the great work, as Thomas Berry would envision the work of humans as in this period, to create mutually enhancing, not mutually beneficial, but mutually enhancing relationships, ways of human presence in the world, humans dwelling not only with each other, but with all species. And I really have a sense that as I look around, and none of us is like all that young, that it's funny to say that after all these years of working, that this now is our moment. We've spent years and years and years preparing ourselves, or not even knowing that, being prepared for our vocation, really now, which is to be a human cosmological presence. And it's a dedicated task. It's a dedicated task. So I'm very, very grateful to be among you. And as I said, once again, you'll notice the phrase mutually enhancing relationships. And it's because I pull that out because I love what it evokes in people, because it catches you, because we think about mutually beneficial relationships. But these are mutually evocative. They call creativity out from us. And the universe thrives in relationships anyway. And they call us not only to be mutually enhancing in our human relationships, but also to relate to other species in that way. And Thich Nhat Hanh has that gorgeous phrase about interbeing, and the verb is interbe, to interbe. And that is such an intimate phrase. generating new energy and deeper commitment and new beings, perhaps. And so even when we talk about that, it's another way of talking about love. And the universe in its moment-to-moment totality from the beginning seems to be in love with newness. And it's not interested in knockoffs or trinkets or stagnation, nor peace at any price, which kind of stinks after a while. So another way I think of referring to the call of creativity from the cosmos is to say that humanity has come to be the self-reflective consciousness of the vast universe itself, evolving into greater and greater complexity toward utterly profound communion, not only among us and between us, but from the vast stretches of life and death and the future. The future is present in potential right now, right here, and it depends on us. So I'd like to just take this moment of grace, because it is grace, to pray. So please just kind of get comfortable. And we begin with a moment to remember the constancy of Earth's moon come into being about 4.5 billion years ago. And so this is going to be kind of an ancient prayer. And you've most likely noticed the moon is full tonight. It's called the beaver moon in some cultures. And this gorgeous, luminous moon, planet Earth's closest companion, calls us back to what we were called to bear about 45 years ago. The November moon of that year was the last full moon experienced by Mara Clark, Jean Donovan, Dorothy Kazel, and Ida Ford. All four were missionaries in Guatemala at that time. Two were Marino, one was an Ursuline sister, and the fourth one was a lay missioner. And they died before the December moon fully lit the creases and the cracks, the streams and the fincas of El Salvador. So we celebrate tonight a moment of grace with these women. If they had lived, we would always have admired their lives, how they carried embers of sorrow and healing, and how they ardently integrated mission into themselves. And that's why they were killed. But their deaths were sordid, S-O-R-D-I-D. They were kidnapped, brutally raped, beaten, murdered, and flung into shallow graves by the armed forces of the Salvadoran government. I often wonder how intimate they might have felt with the other women of El Salvador, and how terrified they must have felt for each other, for their own being, and for the mission. And that liminal moment of grace still unfolds, I think, within us, especially those of us of a certain age. Because those women are still
Well, I didn't do that yet, but I will. I'll just see the speaker. So
because
thank you, Angela. See you. Bye.
those women are still shining with surrender. And I have to believe that they know and did know that they would not be ungiven. And they live on in their inspiration to us even now. what they knew and how they experienced what they knew and how their experience unfolded into new experiences, new heart, new intelligence, glistening on the threshold of profound faith. The experience of themselves as the self-reflective consciousness of the pain and the glory of El Salvador. So as their breath is gone, let us treasure the fact that we can breathe in. So I would just invite us all just to breathe in, conscious of our relationship with oxygen, and then slowly breathe out in gratitude. An offering of carbon dioxide made from our very bodies for the trunk and the leaf, for oceans, phytoplankton, green food for sea creatures, the food of ourselves loving the world. Because we are the self-reflective consciousness of the cosmos, and we too shall not be ungiven, even if all we can do is breathe in love. So let's just kind of take a moment to breathe and to remember those women, to remember our own mission, to become the self-reflective consciousness of the cosmos, beginning from where we are. So let's just breathe in. Perhaps we're breathing in the breath of those four women, of dinosaurs, of Jesus, of each other. And let's breathe out the hope for transformation. We awaken to the words of the Earth Charter. Let ours be a time remembered for the awakening of a new reverence for the mystery of being, gratitude for the gift of life, and humility for our human place in nature and the whole. Tonight, we're invited to be with this gorgeous soul, Thomas Berry. And he's going to set the scene for his proposal, which is the cosmology of peace is presently, in our time, the basic issue. The ways we modern humans tell stories about peace, think about peace, and equally how we experience peace and establish peace may not be adequate for our time. We must begin to take on something of a cosmological role. Our thinking is not adequate as humans to deal with the tensions of this time. Next week, we'll be together in solidarity once again as we struggle with and are questioned, our way of being questioned even by Thomas's proposal. And hopefully it will ignite some joy, and it will gift us, even with the mission, to deal creatively with the enormous tensions that afflict our planet. And as Wendell Berry, the other Berry, has written, when we engage in this work, it's no paradisal dream. It's not cool. Its hardship is its possibility. So, let us move into Thomas's thinking. Right now I'm quoting from him, "The Cosmology of Peace is the very last chapter of Thomas's essays, and it's entitled, as Margaret pointed out, Dream of the Earth, and it was published in 1988 by the Sierra Club." Try to think back where you were in 1988, or around that time, the early 1990s. What you were doing, how you approached peace work. This cosmology of peace, this essay is, Thomas wastes no time when he begins in widening our embrace of it all. He begins with the universe's coming to be. That's an odd way to begin in 1988, because he contends that the universe, earth, life, and consciousness are all violent processes. He goes back to the elements that are born in the supernova, where the sun is lit then by gravitational pressure. Air and water, which we take in, which we drink, comes from volcanic explosions and eruptions. Mountains are formed by clashes of great continental and oceanic segments of the Earth's crust, not to mention the swirling fire at Earth's core dancing with the sun's attractive pull. And that's where that gorgeous stuff from Teilhard comes. Fire, light, light of the world, radiance. So Thomas would contend that life emerges and advances by the struggle of species for a more complete life expression. That in itself is gorgeous. He doesn't talk about the survival of the fittest.
Mm-hmm.
His concern is to see more deeply into the psychic, numinous, mystical, spiritual dimensions of Earth and of the cosmos, not only of its human inhabitants. He continues to say that humans have made their way amid the harshness of the natural world and turned around and imposed their violence on the natural world. He honors the enormity of the psychic effort to articulate the human development that emerges from and gives expression to the dramatic confrontation of forces that shape the universe. He's generous that way. Generous that way. We are related. If the universe is a cauldron of relationships.
Excuse
And
me, Barbara.
Thomas,
Charles, would you mute yourself, please? Okay, go ahead, Barbara. I'm sorry to interrupt.
that's okay. It's just to say that he's so generous and gives us the difficult news with such beautiful form of writing that you want to go on to the next sentence. And he's talking about the dramatic confrontation of forces that shape the universe. And he goes on to say that this confrontation may give rise to the tears of things, but its creative function would be hard to ignore. And I think that if we had not studied cosmology, that would be a hard sentence for us, because you have to kind of get your mind around that confrontation has a creative function. And he uses this gorgeous word that I love, splendor. The enormous psychic effort required to articulate the human mode of being in all its full imaginative, emotional, and intellectual qualities finds expression among this sequence of catastrophic events and a splendor that sets the context for the emerging human age. Imagine the word splendor. In our rational mind, splendor is a noun, but it's got this like pulsing thing going on with it. You can feel it vibrating as emergent and as kind of undeniably a planetary identity. Splendor. And he doesn't contrast it with catastrophic events, nor with confrontation. But within that explanation of confrontation, the word splendor pops up, because that's the end of it. That's the purpose of all of this catastrophic happenings, is for splendor to emerge. And he divides our human presence between the modern form, which began 60,000 years ago, and the 2 million years before that of transitional human types. And he makes this important also distinction that humans in modern form coincide with the last glacial advance and recession. And in some ways, we are the generation that has had 30 to 40 years of thinking about glaciers.
Mm.
Before that, people didn't think about glaciers. And so it's another way that we are relating further back beyond our presence into a cosmological sense, that this glaciers were probably, a science word, and now they're an everyday preoccupation. So he is talking about the advance of the glaciers and then their recession. And the recession is important because it's the time of the Neolithic villages and horticulture and weaving. And at that time, humans began to establish patterns of life controlled by intelligence and human decision. Before that, we were part of a planetary community. But this intelligence and the human decisions now impinge with progressive destruction on the patterns of the natural world, releasing all over the planet a new violence. Thomas is very concerned that sometimes our ideas are not grounded in experience. That's one of his things. And so he is very quick to help people move through much of this with Teilhard, to read Teilhard, because Teilhard, he said, had the experience. He wasn't just a thinker. And that's kind of a little bit of a shock to those of us who are Dominicans, because we've been taught that our work is to help create a loving world using the texts and the thinking of, of great philosophers and theologians. And this is kind of a little bit of a, an intrusion into the myth of who it is to be a Dominican. And we did see before that violence in the natural world was essentially creative, and it ultimately brought forth splendor in its longer arc of development. Humans, on the other hand, our presence on the planet is associated with ambivalence in its ultimate consequences. It's a question of, like, really? And so if you were to think about our presence on the planet now and splendor, do you think about a golden toilet seat? Do you think about the story of the rich man and Lazarus? Do you think about Gaza and Israel, Iran, Central America, Argentina, Egypt, Poland? What do you think about? Do you think about your own life? Do you think about diplomacy, US diplomacy linked to money and optics? How it defines a friend or an enemy? And if we think about what we're surrounded by, I think you can get the human need for creativity and for splendor vis-a-vis the cost of ruination of soul and body by the inhabitants, the human inhabitants of the Earth community. The creativity that Thomas is talking about, he says, has always been associated with disequilibrium and a tension of forces. Again, Thomas restrains the Darwinian language, the survival of the fittest. He's not against it, but he restrains it because that's not his concern. In the Western culture, Thomas's turn of phrase, creativity, disequilibrium, and tensions of forces, is a show of planetary generosity and of deeply intimate contemplative knowing. This trinity of words, creativity, disequilibrium, and tension of forces, is not an original phrase for him. And in this essay, he cites the contribution of many others, but his own life experience speaks to this care of building a vocabulary to suit this moment, attentive to the wisdom of an ancestral line that speaks about knowing as groping rather than pontificating, groping rather than falling back into old tropes that are no longer adequate. As an example of the power of emergence, where things build upon things from before, Thomas does not discard the insights of others. He's interesting. He's self-aware, self-confident, but he's not proud. It's very interesting because he takes other people's contributions into himself because he's born to tell a new story. It's fundamentally his own story, as the universe comes alive in his self-reflective consciousness. Meditating on that really is one of those gorgeous moments when our own ego can take a breath and not always have to be prominent. And you can see this in the life of Thomas Berry. So if we want to experience one of the languages in which Stardust speaks, we might want to dwell in Thomas's human language, abide in it, grope. Now, I know grope has a different meaning, multiple meanings, but you know what it means. What Thomas is talking about, there's nothing, we're not here for definitive reasons. We need to grope towards the truth. We need to have, I think, a fierce humility. And there's discomfort in that, a lot of discomfort in that, because we'd rather not train in fierce humility out in the open, if you get my sense. Fierce humility is always a heavy lift, always, but it's creative. And you can notice, even in the phrase fierce humility, there's a tension of forces, especially for women, because we're still in a recovery period from a certain type of humility being foisted on us. So I just want to pause here just for just for even a minute. A minute is a long, wonderful, gifted time. And just to try to find a way to embrace the contours of fierce humility. Now, I'd like to just see if this has some resonance with you. One of the phrases I'd like us to kind of lift up is a phrase we've known all of our lives, the survival of the fittest. And in the other hand, and you can keep your hands on your lap, but in the other hand, use the conjunction of phrases that Thomas uses in this essay. Disequilibrium, tension of forces, and creativity. Survival of the fittest, and in the other hand, disequilibrium, creativity, and tension of forces. Just hold them. Hold them in your hands and see what happens. What happens with you, with your imagination? Do you have a felt sense of either of them? We certainly know survival of the fittest, and did it ever really define you? Did you ever, win the fight and raise your eyebrows and say, I get it? Were you ever eaten up in an argument? That was unwinnable anyway. And on the other hand, do you have a picture for the tension of forces that kind of led you to a creativity? Like Paul was, knocked off his horse, or Mary in the garden, like coming up and slobbering at the feet of Jesus, and who knows if he was like kind of struck by this thing about coming in and resurrecting, and she's just crying and, tell me if you took him away where he is. I want, and from her voice, from the tenor of her voice, he knew who she was. He might have been as surprised as she was. And it's like, Mary? So talk about tension of forces there. And tension of forces, as we read that text now, it's very different from the way we have learned to read it. There's a disequilibrium there. So think about that. And if it can, this imagination that we have, can it really give us entry into the dynamics of the universe? And so back to Thomas. Thomas spoke that our presence now is indefinite. There's no word to speak about it except to say ambivalence. And at first, that wasn't so. At first, the tension of forces in the planetary process, whether it was physically, biologically, or consciously, often resulted in destructive moments. Yet ultimately, they were transformed in some creative context. We talk a lot about transformation. What's the creative context? That we are providing so that transformation can happen. For those of us who are old, it's like, do I have to do some more work? Or this is exciting. I can spend my last years doing this. And for those of us who are not old, sorry, you got a lot of work ahead of you. So as humans developed into a planetary power, we kind of suppressed or extinguished, and those are Thomas's words. Let me just see if they are his words. Yeah, suppressed or extinguished, and I say think extinction, the functioning of the Earth as a planet. And so the planet became increasingly dependent on human wisdom and human decision. And this dependence often resulted in destructive patterns that became normalized. The conquest mentality is coextensive with civilization processes. Think about words like savage. Think about words like, what do they bring to your mind as a child? If you can go back to that. What was it like to be civilized? The civilization process gave rise to the domination of peoples and lands. Conquest, the doctrine of discovery, which was actually codified. It is actually codified in US law, even though it was put into practice in the 1500s in Europe. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg defended it. So from early agriculture, think water and soil, to the conquest and domination of peoples and other lands, all of that has an effect of establishing a highly charged and politicized sense of identity. I'm an American. I'm a Catholic. I'm a Dominican sister. I'm a woman. I'm a, all of these, but they come from these highly charged and politicized sense of that most of us fall into somewhat easily, of being superior. And we chose, that's something to talk about. But anyway, so all of this, in turn, birthed conflicts over land ownership, as well as giving birth to technologies that controlled enormous powers contained in the physical structures of Earth. That's Thomas's language. To control enormous powers contained in the physical structures of Earth. Again, to know Thomas's language is to know his soul. He does not use the language of resources. He will later on, but he doesn't use it here. So if you found any resonance in that simple exercise of welcoming viscerally our perceptual bias a few minutes ago, try feeling the heft and the weight of responsibility, which is a good thing, between the word resources and the phrase enormous powers contained in the physical structure of the Earth.
Mm. Mm.
Which one is less embodied? Which one are you more easily thinking about manipulating, having, buying, must have, already bought? And as we do this with our hands, whether they're up here or on our lap, the gesture is one of adoration. So how and where, just intuitively, do we edge closer and snuggle into divine presence? This exercise is a conduit into Thomas's sense of the absolute need to face into what we learned with Miriam Trace McGillis. In this era, humans are experiencing a perceptual crisis. When we look at something, this is a cup. When we look at something, when we have a vision of life, what do we think of? Hopefully it puts us into some kind of a crisis. Not a crisis, but, in some kind of a, what am I doing now? And the destructive power now available is such that what is required is a change in human perception, Thomas writes. In every phase of earthly existence, to understand what is happening on and to the planet. He says destruction, and if you don't want to call it destruction, a major, irreversible alteration of major life systems through human hands, these hands, into our hands, into your hands. In our vision is the life of all we love and despise, all who we don't know, all mystery, all awe, and a present failure at this order of magnitude, where there is an irreversible alteration of the major life systems through our hands. A present failure at this order of magnitude cannot be remedied later in larger successes. We can hardly envision the order of magnitude that we are called to hardly envision it. Because this isn't, what we're moving into is not just a change, if you know what I mean. We're moving into the work of transformation, and what do we cherish and what do we give up? And a present failure at this order of magnitude cannot be remedied later by a larger success. And it's because this is a living planet, numinous, psychic, full of mystery, a bringing forth planet, a planet of tenderness, even in the severity of its discipline, to birth splendor and the hope of activating energy commensurate with the dream of species for a more complete life expression. And Thomas goes on to say, in this context, failure in creativity would be an absolute failure. You get kind of jittery at that, right? Failure in creativity would be an absolute failure. So I'm gonna stop there, and next week we're gonna take up Thomas's proposal and examine it to see if just to see how we feel about it. And I would urge you honestly to take some time to weigh options, weigh the heft of some of what we talked about today. And notice that as you're weighing it, you are, whether it's intuitive, it's an act of adoration. It's another way of praying. Because we, like those sisters and Dorothy, excuse me,
Ida.
who was the lay woman?
Jean.
Jean Donovan. I would bet my life that none of us here on this Zoom wants to be ungiven. We wants not to be ungiven. We want to be given. And so this is what kind of what our prayer might be. I will not be ungiven. 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 Yeah. So let's stop here, and maybe it's time for some small groups if we are going to do that, what do you think, Margaret or Angela? Do we have enough people to be in small groups, or do you want to stay in one large group?
We have 25 people.
Okay, we probably want to go into smaller groups then, right?
Well, I think we all know what will happen if we stay in the large group. Just a small number of people will begin to share, and we won't hear from everyone.
Right.
But I wonder, Barbara, before we go into groups, if anyone has any questions about anything that you raised, might we take a couple of minutes for that
Sure.
if there's any clarifications needed before we go into small groups. Is that okay?
Yeah, yeah,
And we can do that in the large group,
okay.
Good.
right? So you will know how to either raise your hand. I think there's two screens here. If you know how to raise your hand on the computer, do that. If not, just wave your hand and we'll find you. Angela, I'm going to go to the second screen. If you stay on the first one.
Okay, all my people are on one screen.
Oh, good. Okay, good.
Okay,
All right.
good.
So anybody have any questions that you would like Barbara, or comments that you would like to raise before we go into small groups?
Yep, Nora?
Myself excited by many of the words or ways of saying thing, but struggling with what would that look like? Like, for example, when you spoke about mutually enhancing relationships, not mutually beneficial.
Beneficial. Yeah.
I listen to that and I say, okay, I understand. But in my experience, mutually enhancing relationships are also mutually beneficial. That's
Do I-
my experience. So I say to myself, maybe I'm not getting it.
I think mutually enhancing, Nora, is to create something new. I think it does include mutually beneficial. It just ratchets itself up another notch. And
You know what it's like? It's like, you know, when something catastrophic or tragic happens and it's terrible, and you say, I never would wish that anybody has to go through that, but it made me who I am. Like a good came at, you know what I mean?
yeah. Yeah.
I'm not denying how terrible it was or Pollyannaing it, but the fact is that some good did come out of it.
Yeah.
Like an enhanced level of existence came out of
There
it.
you go, girlfriend. There you go. Yes, you got it.
Okay. But I could go through that with like about 10 different phrases. And I don't know that I'd get it, but anyhow, I don't want to take up any more time.
Anybody else? Thanks, Nora. Anybody else have a question or a comment, question for clarification or a comment?
Jean, you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, Barbara, I'm not sure that I'm understanding your language of I want to be given and not ungiven. I'm not sure.
It's a double negative, and I will not be ungiven, meaning I will be given. It's a double negative.
But what does that mean to be ungiven?
To not be ungiven. I will not be ungiven. I will not hold back. I don't know that I was clear enough about, I obviously wasn't clear enough about that, but that's what the meaning is that no matter what happens to me, I will not be ungiven as long as as long as I have breath or as long as I have the faculties. I will always give myself to whatever.
Okay, so to give, To give
Yeah.
myself
Mhm.
is to be given. Okay. Mhm.
Margaret?
Um, I'm fascinated with, on my screen, I can still see one of the slides in the background of the screen for the Zoom. And I'm when we were looking at those slides, and now with that in the background on my machine, I'm thinking to myself, remember, this is not out there,
Mhm.
what you're looking at. This is not, remember, I'm saying to myself, this is not out there. We are all in this. These photographs that you showed us of the universe unfolding. So I think like that's the first point, because we continually separate ourselves, and I remember Thomas Berry saying, that as humans we have a deep rage at the conditions in which life has been given to us.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't know, those are the things that are running around in my mind as and my heart as you talk, because it's so hard to stay connected to our identity as the earth conscious in the kind of world we live in.
Absolutely. Yeah. What do you do with that rage, Margaret? Or do you feel it, or
I
how do you experience it?
I experience it less now that I'm older and have lived through stuff. But in my younger years, I would say one way that I experienced it was as I struggled with the reality of death
Mhm.
and the death of loved ones.
Mhm.
I would say that's probably the the um, the major way in which I experienced it.
Yeah.
It's a lot less now
Yeah.
than it was. Um,
Yeah. Thank you.
mm,
Thank you.
Barb,
Jean?
what
Mhm.
Barbara's just said reminds me that we would like a world without violence,
mm-hmm,
which is to say, we reject how the universe is.
mm-hmm,
We don't like it. We want another universe.
mm-hmm,
And so we're living because we would like to be always peaceful. I just think of like the violence of a volcano and what it does to people and animals and everyone. We would like it that wouldn't happen. And so, in a sense, we're not accepting the world as it is, the universe as it is created, which is to say, too, I think, that we would like a different divine, a different God, different. And that kind of rejection of things as they are leads to such the violence that the human has created because we changed it. We want, we want Disneyland. That's the way we want. That's the world we want. We want
Yeah.
artificial things. We don't like roses that die, we get plastic ones so that they can always look beautiful. And so it's kind of a rejection of life, the way, and the rejection of the universe instead of embracing. And I think what Nora said, when we don't do that and we go with the universe as created, the world as created, we go through tremendous grief and pain and
Mhm.
suffering.
Mhm.
it makes us who we are.
Yeah.
And without that, I think we would be very superficial people, kind of plastic people,
Mhm.
which
I want to jump in here, if I may. Do we want to go into small groups? Or do we want to stay in the large group? I'm looking at you. Just give me some indication by shaking your head one way or the other. I see some people shaking their heads no. Yeah,
Yeah.
Denise? Denise, you're muted.
I said, I think the larger group would be better. Like, I'm not as deep into this as you people are. But like Margaret was just saying, we want a different world. Do we really? As you see what's going on, but you look to the pictures that you were showing. It's just the better world, and it's just why people are looking to go to Mars with something new. And where do I fit into this part of renewal? God is renewing the face of the earth. And where do I fit in?
Mm.
You know, it's like when I first had my cataracts done. Oh my God, the sky is so blue and this is so, you know, and it was like a whole new world. But when you look at the pictures from the Hubble, oh my God, look what we have to embrace. You know, we look at the petty stuff of who's the president, who's this, who's not doing this. I think of the land. You know, I like to diddle dabble in the garden, but I mean, now look, all of they're talking about the floods and everything of the earth. Well, if they keep mining and stripping the grounds of every tree in creation, all the dirt, all the minerals, that's what makes up this earth. Why do you know? But greed is taking it away from the people and giving it to the few.
Mhm.
And I look to the skies at night. Amityville's a great place. When I used to go there and stand at the back door and look out, oh my God, this is what you've given me today. Where can I bring it to others? What can I do to help you?
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah. That's
Anybody
lovely.
else? Thank you, Denise.
you're
Mhm.
welcome.
Anything,
Carol,
anyone
you
else
wanted
want
to say something? Carol?
Okay, thank you. Mostly I wanted to say that I'm really grateful to have had this opportunity to join everyone today, this evening. But I have a scheduled phone call with my daughter at 8, and so I wouldn't want to get into a small group
Okay.
because I have to actually get off
Okay.
in about 15 minutes, I guess, or
Okay.
maybe a little sooner. Um, so I just want to say goodbye to everybody because I don't want to interrupt anyone later when people are talking because I will have to get off soon.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you,
you, Carol.
Carol.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
Anybody else that Angela, if you can see anyone, I can't.
Yep, Michael?
I just had a question, if I may, in response to what Jean had said. Is it Disney World that we want, or is it Eden?
Hmm. 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 That's an interesting question. Hmm.
That's all I got.
I think, I think that's an interesting question. Why do you put those two images as a choice? What's the, how are you thinking?
Well, I guess when we talk about, I mean, Disney World has a negative connotation in the sense that it's of this world, right? It's created by us. Whereas Eden is kind of, the vision of us before the fall, and then God created in that sense. So in a sense, it's almost in my head at least, the difference between um, eternal and temporal things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the reason getting back to what you were talking about, the one way is, if it's Eden, it doesn't strike me necessarily as a rejection of God and of the world. If it's Disney World, then it does strike me as a rejection of God and our divinely created world. So there is I think that there might be a meaningful difference between those two things, although I may be blowing it up in my head. But that's what was going on in my head as the discussion went on.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Michael, couldn't it be
thing is-
both and?
I don't know.
The thing is that actually, Michael, what we're being taught now is, and it's a leap, it is a huge leap, is that eternity is in the now.
Mhm.
It's a huge leap for those of us who grew up with those things being taught as different from each other, if not opposite. It's a huge leap. But the new cosmology, I think, is helpful in that way, that what you're living through now is what we're all living through now. Mirrors eternity if we're deeply committed to being cosmological in our perspective, which is not
That's
to
very
make
helpful.
ourselves do it.
Mhm.
So Anne,
Thank you
you
for that.
wanted to say something, and then Denise.
Okay. It just occurred to me, with the change from daylight savings time and how we're in the dark earlier, and how that throws off everybody, supposedly, for a couple of weeks, and that we're so connected to the change of the place in a planet. It touches us and we think we'll be out of it right away, but it changes everybody's, either they're tired or they can't, it's different or whatever, that we're so related and to space. And those pictures that you showed at the beginning makes me feel that I'm a part of all of this, when we say that what God created, and we're all related to what God has made, not just to ourselves or to each other, but to beyond us. That's all I can think of.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you.
Denise, you wanted to say something?
No, I
No.
said before. Or is there
Oh,
another Denise?
The other Denise.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
That's
Okay.
it. No, I'm good. I'm good. I'm just listening now. Thank you.
Okay. Carol?
Yeah, before I leave, I just wanted to say something I was thinking about was at first when I first started reading chapter 16, because I'm fairly new to Thomas Berry, and but I was also in reaction to the first line about the tension and the violence, and thinking, no, that's not the world I want to live in, or that's not what I want to be part of, kind of like what Jean was saying. But there's this other thought process that I have, or that I've been learning about too, which is kind of like the whole thing about yin and yang. And there was the part where they started talking about, where he started talking about the binding curve that draws all things together simultaneously, which produces the inner forces of matter, expansion of tension. I'm trying to get to the part that, anyway, it just made me realize that the universe, maybe if we understood more about why there's this violence and then also these wonderful things. It's about the universe was created with contrast because that is what inspires creativity. If there was no contrast, there's no inspiration or motivation to create, because everything's just fine the way we want it, whether it's Eden or Disney World or whatever. It's the contrast that helps us evolve and create. And that's what it made me think of yin and yang. And I've never really understood yin and yang that much, but it's somewhere in here about I can't find it. It's something about, oh, I guess it wasn't the curve is sufficiently closed to hold all things together, while it is sufficiently open to continue its creative emergence into the future. I guess that's the part that, I don't know, I just started to understand as maybe that's what he's talking about, because I wasn't really sure myself. But anyway, I just wanted to share that and see if I'm on the right path of understanding any of this or not.
You know, unless, does somebody else want to address that? Think about your lungs filling up and letting go, filling up and letting go. And Thomas also talks about that's part of that rhythm is part of what is endemic in the universe. That our bodies hold many of those same dynamics from the beginning of the universe. Closing your eyes and opening them. Opening your hand and closing them. And Thomas talks about God as the compassionate curve. Open enough to create new things and closed enough to hold them all together, and then letting them go, opening them up. It's Thomas talks a lot about symphonies, that in the first note, the whole symphony is there, in a sense. And some people would go back further and say, when those hands hover over that piano and the body bends to respond to what is happening, the whole symphony is created. So we'll get into some of this next week, but but that's how stories start. Also, you know, you don't even know what you're going to write, and yet you write the story, but the kernel was there, and then everything else supported, and you're totally surprised at who the protagonist turns out to be. That's how writers kind of make their way through some things. But that wasn't always true for all of our ancestors, because their minds were not developed into self-reflective consciousness.
Barbara, could you just repeat what you said before? Open enough to hold all things and closed enough to...
No, closed enough to hold all that has come forth. Closed enough to hold it.
To hold.
And notice it's not this, it's this. So that things are not stuck. They don't become inert. They continue to be creative.
So it's like open enough to welcome all things. And
yes,
closed enough to hold them.
And closed enough to hold them. And that's what's called the compassionate curve. And it's the curve of space also. It's October, where I live, is one of those months where the clouds present themselves in such a way that you know you're living on a round planet. You just know it. And I said that to somebody, and they said, oh, it's only an optical illusion. But it happens that the clouds, the way they form, and you might be able to actually see it if that, even now, that the way that you're on a round planet. And a round planet makes a big difference. Makes a huge, big difference. And that's where we are. And so what Thomas is saying is that curve is actually primordial. It supports life because of its relationship to the sun and the seasonal things happen because of a meteor hitting Earth. But all of that, not that it was planned, but it happened. And it's really quite marvelous, and gives us an intuition into this incredible mystery of divine presence without describing it and defining it. It's the gift. It's the gift of self-reflective consciousness, being the self-reflective consciousness of the whole. It does not present itself. It knows these kinds of things are not welcome demonstrations or descriptions to the rational mind. Because there's a difference between proof and truth. We're accustomed to wanting everything proven. We always have a way to explain ourselves. We're a little defensive. That's where fierce humility kind of takes that cloud away. Just takes it away. You want proof? I may not be the person that's going to give you proof of anything, of XYZ happened. But I can enter into a dialogue around truth. Let's discover it together. And those kinds of things, it's the same kind of thing that these mysteries do not present themselves. The rational mind the rational mind is not there to explain everything. And it's hard to live in mystery.
Well, I think another piece, Barb, is that that's the only way that we've been taught.
Right.
To know truth, but is through the rational mind. But there's also a knowing of the heart, knowing that the body has these knowings, and that's another way of perceiving.
True.
And we've kind of denied that. We've grown up in a world, and it had a beginning, actually, of the intellect being the thing where we've totally ignored the body, the heart knowing, and the body knowing. And I think we're coming into that now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that happening. And of course, a lot of it is related to women, because that body knowing and the heart knowing was always rejected as kind of, or even intuition, kind of, that was not the real world. You had to prove it intellectually. Yeah.
Mhm.
I keep going back to, I just had it and I closed it. In the article on page 219, when Thomas quotes an anthropologist by the name of Kroeber, I don't know who he is, but he says the ideal situation for any individual or culture is not exactly bovine placidity. It is rather the highest state of tension that the organism can bear creatively.
Yeah.
And that's what I hear us struggling with. How do
Mhm.
we live in that state? In the
That's a
highest
wonder.
state of
Yeah.
tension we can bear creatively.
Yeah. That's a great question because we're going to deal with that next week. That's part of this, because we're not going to abolish tension, no matter, we're not going to abolish it.
Mm-hmm.
It's there for a reason.
Yeah, because it produces creativity.
Yeah. It pushes the limits, and we push back. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where you get this flow. And those of you who live on New York, who live on the Sound, know that in ways that are pretty profound, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Did I see another hand? Oh, Ellen.
I was just trying to find it before where he was talking about struggle, or was I dreaming that?
No.
Is that what you were saying about for next week?
What next week we're going to go from, we're going to look at the end of page 218, and then we'll go to 219 and 220.
No, because I was under the impression
221.
when I was reading it that struggle wasn't bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not.
It helps you grow. In other words, the universe, Earth, is ever changing.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I'm still trying to grasp it. I'm sorry.
No, you're.
Struggle makes you look for more, I think.
I'm definitely going to reread it. I read it right before, and
Yeah.
There was a part where I think he had mentioned something about humans having the capability as far as destroying. And that kind of, I mean, I know it, but I guess accepting is another thing. That part was, we evolved so much. And if we didn't evolve, then there's no growth to where we can see more things that are going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ugh, you blow my mind.
Ellen, it's a thank you for that, because that's a dilemma, that we're all having. And I think that question about, do we want to live without tension, and do we want to live something that looks like coming from a magazine. You know, do we want to live on vacation all the time?
No, because you don't grow as a person. In other words, to me, change is good. In other words, it might not seem good in the very beginning, but if you look at different aspects of it, one part of it might be good. And the earth had to have changed in order for us to grow.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think some people are willing to try to understand as far as the universe, and we're all under this or on this earth. You know, I used to tell my late husband that we're all different, you know, and we're not clones of one another. I wouldn't want a clone of myself, but everybody's got to work together,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, as Jean said, the rage, we have such rage against what's not perfect, according to our standards.
Yeah.
So, excuse me for jumping in here, but it is 8:02.
Yeah.
Okay. And I want to thank I want to thank you, Barb, for the way you broke open this chapter in Thomas's book, and I can feel it's created a pensive, contemplative kind of feel among us. So I'd encourage us all to jump into that, however that works for you, whether it's rereading the chapter, whether it's going outside, whether it's both. But you know, Barbara has planted seeds here, so try to let them try to let them grow, nurture them this week. And we'll see what happens next week. What
And Jean,
creativity has emerged.
yeah.
Okay,
And Jean has a prayer.
good. Okay.
Jean,
Well,
your prayer at the end is one of Jean's poems to kind of pull us.
yeah, Barb asked me to read this poem. And it's titled In Memory of and Gratitude to Franz Jagerstetter, Oscar Romero, Jean Donovan, Ida Ford, Maura Clark, and Dorothy Cazell. You gave your life in love, sacrifice embedded into wholeness, became food for me, energy for action. You gave your life, and sight was given me, an opening to find my way back home. I celebrate your life and your self-giving, a reason for rejoicing and for hope. The story carries on, expanding to include all the acts of courage and of bravery, acts of solidarity. The sun who gives its life and energy away to nourish soil and seed and all of life on this beloved planet, burns on, and so do I.
Beautiful.
That was beautiful.
Thank you, Jean.
Thank you very much.
So have a wonderful week, everyone. And blessings and again, gratitude to each of you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's
Thank you,
wonderful.
Barbara.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Night.
It was great.
Right.